We are back for another episode of Character Roulette. This time we are covering a character that isn't exactly unknown, with him having his own live-action TV series not all that long ago. Swamp Thing is a character that I have always been a bit interested in. The idea of a character who is essentially one with plants and flora is a great concept. Swamp Thing debuted in 1971 in a comic series called House of Secrets. Because he is a humanoid but a monstrous one with the ability to shape change, his physical appearance stats are just variable. The only consistent seems to be his red eyes. While I am not very versed in his mythos yet, from his powers and abilities he seems to be almost godlike. With him being an avatar of the green at one point is just awesome. I do know a little bit about the different cosmic energies. I know there are the green, which is associated with plant life, the blue, which I think is about aquatic stuff, and the red, which is animals. I believe that one of the versions of Beast Boy actually taps into the red for his powers or something like that. The couple powers that really capture my attention is he can appear wherever there is life and travel in time. Now, I don't know how literal these descriptions are, but that sounds like he has control over time and space, essentially. I am beyond excited to jump into Swamp Thing. For this video, I will be covering a comic series called Roots of the Swamp Thing, which is a compilation of sorts where they cover the origins of the creature. I will start with his first ever appearance in House of Secrets 92 and then go into it. So let's go. From my understanding, the first appearance of Swamp Thing is immediately rebooted with his next appearance. So I don't believe any of this is canon for the Swamp Thing character. We start with Swamp Thing walking through his home, the swamp. He's having a bit of an internal monologue. Seems he is an Edgar Allan Poe kind of guy. He talks in a very poetic, weird manner. Just look at how he narrates how he is moving through the swamp. I move slowly through the moss-draped mire, treading a path that is worn smooth from my constant passing. On beyond the shadows and the dark trees twisting tendrils to my inevitable destination. Geez, quite the drama queen we have here already. The next page we find out why the path is so often traveled by the monster. He has fallen for a woman named Linda Olson Ridge, who just got married to some other dude 6 months ago. She used to be with Alex Olson, who is currently the Swamp Thing, and she still thinks of him even now. They are married for a year until an accident while working as a scientist caused an explosion, leaving everyone to assume Alex was dead. Linda is now married to Damien, the man who was Alex's partner, and was jealous of him. I have a feeling he had something to do with the accident. We see that Damien was thinking dark thoughts behind the facade he was presenting. It is then confirmed that he was indeed the one who was behind the accident. He dragged Alex's unconscious body out of the swamp and buried him alive. As Swamp Thing watches from the darkness, Damien plans to kill Linda, as he believes she is piecing together what really happened. Right before Damien can stab Linda with a hypodermic needle, Swamp Thing crashes in and strangles Damien to death. He reaches towards Linda to calm her, and sees that she only sees a monster. Not being able to make any sound, he turns and walks away, ending the comic with, "If tears could come, they would." Swamp Thing is immediately rebooted with his next appearance in Swamp Thing number 1, Dark Genesis. Swamp Thing stands outside a barn, waiting for the ones that tried to kill him to return. We go back to the past to see Alec and Linda Holland arriving to the barn being driven by Lieutenant Cable. Cable then spouts some exposition at us, letting us know that the Hollands are working on biorestorative research, and it's super duper valuable to the government. After some work, they test their new compound and the plant grows tremendously. Success. Before they can celebrate, though, there is a knock at the door and a man named Ferret shows up asking to talk in private. They offer to buy the formula, and when Alec refuses, they are about to rough him up when a car coming scares them off, spouting, "We'll be seeing you, Dr. Holland, soon." Cable gets a bit worked up hearing about people trying to buy the formula, letting Alec know that he wasn't joking earlier about them being merchandise. After Cable leaves, about 10 minutes later, they hear a scuffling outside. Armed with a gun, Alec opens the door to find a dog. Linda uses her woman powers to convince Alec to keep the dog, but unfortunately that was a bad idea as the bad guys had planted a radio transmitter inside the dog's head. Later, Ferret shows up again to try and buy the formula, and when Alec refuses once again, they attack him and plant a bomb under their chemistry table for some reason. Alec is then engulfed in flames, running out into the swamp. At his funeral, Linda exclaims, "Poor Alec! If only I had been there. Maybe." I don't know why she's British, but Cable tells her there was nothing that she could have done. They head back to the lab and it's been repaired. Cable basically tells Linda that she doesn't matter as a person and to get back to work. I gotta say, Cable is kind of a dick. Something starts coming out of the swamp, a creature who slowly gains consciousness. This panel right here is just awesome. Look at how cool Swamp Thing looks here. Swamp Thing tries to go inside the lab to get Linda's help, but upon catching his reflection, he decides not to. This really isn't important, but Cable says the dog can't hear Linda because he probably has a flea in its ear. I don't know if this is just a saying of the time, but I am thoroughly confused. Cable shows how useless he is by immediately getting taken out by a bad guy while Ferret and a goon approach Linda. Swamp Thing hears a blam while saving the dog from the mire and returns to the lab to see Linda dead. Swampy runs to the car and says his first words since changing, yelling "Stop!" while smashing the hood of the car, sending Ferret through the front window. Ferret is then killed by Swamp Thing after Ferret put multiple bullets inside of him. Swamp Thing turns and walks away while Cable yells, "Come back here, you monster!" not realizing that Swamp Thing is Alec and he did just save him. Miles away, some mysterious figure is watching the Swamp Thing through the glass and tells his demon minions to fetch him. That leads us to the next issue within the first issue, Swamp Thing number 2, The Man Who Wanted Forever. While just chilling with a dog, watching the ambulance take away Ferret, Swamp Thing is swarmed by demon-like creatures. After Swampy fights off most of them pretty easily, a creature named Ophidian jumps on him and puts him to sleep with his eyes. Also, is this a head fused with a hand that is giving orders to the other creatures? This thing is an abomination. Moving ahead, Cable sees a plane flying away with Swampy chained underneath it, and I just want to point out, how the hell did they plan on landing this plane without smearing Swampy everywhere? Well, they solved that by not showing how he survived the landing and just cutting to him being rowed down a river into a cave. This right here is a pretty sick panel, though, I gotta say. Swampy wakes up and starts beating the monsters while trying to escape. He tries to escape through a window, and for some reason this castle just has a flat, narrow piece of rock sticking out of it. I don't know. Swampy is then greeted by an old man who offers his hand, saying, "Let me help you inside." He goes on to explain to Swampy that he is a wizard who has learned immortality, but is trying to develop a stronger body before performing it, as he does not wish to live forever in his old form. We also learn that the monsters are called unmen. The old man claims to be able to make him human again, and knew his name somehow. He starts doing a checkup on Swampy, finding him to be 7'5" and 547 pounds. He has no blood, and he breathes carbon dioxide and exhales oxygen. We find out the man's name is Arcane, and back at the lab, Cable is planning a trip to hunt down Swampy, and so is the leader who sent Ferret to the lab. Swampy transfers his swamp body to Arcane and returns to his human form. He is once again Alec Holland. But while out for a stroll to get a drink, he overhears Arcane saying how he will use his new body to exact revenge on the town below by destroying them all. Alec runs to destroy the relic that was used to swap the bodies, and in a really cool page, Alec turns back into the Swamp Thing while Arcane returns to his old and decrepit body he once had. While chasing Arcane, Arcane falls out of a window, plummeting to his death, and his creatures jump out after him, as they have answered the age-old question we have all thought about at least once. If the evil magic scientist who made you jumped out of a window, plummeting to his death down a tall, very, very tall mountain, would you do it too? The issue ends with Swampy being looked at from the shadows by the Patchwork Man. We start the next issue of our Swamp Thing journey in Roots of the Swamp Thing issue 2. It covers the Patchwork Man from Swamp Thing 3 and Monster of the Moors from Swamp Thing 4. We start the story with Swamp Thing thinking he was so very close to rejoining civilization. We are told that he was brought here by the Unmen, who are controlled by an aged wizard by the name Arcane, a wizard who had stolen Swamp Thing's form, giving Dr. Alec Holland a human form once again. It did not last long, as he sacrificed it to save a town. Swamp Thing desperately tries to find a cure, but his hands are just too thick to not break the science equipment. He makes a decision to go to America and find someone to help him, before he breaks through the floor only to be caught by another abomination. Unfortunately, Swamp Thing is too slippery, and the creation of Arcane was unable to hold on, sending Swamp Thing to plummet below. We cut to Lieutenant Matt Cable aboard a plane, chasing down the Swamp Thing. He believes the Swamp Thing is responsible for the deaths of Alec and Linda Holland, not knowing that the Swamp Thing is indeed Alec Holland. While out doing police work, he comes across a woman who identifies herself as Arcane. She says the plane that he is tracking belongs to her uncle, though. We cut back to Swamp Thing reawakening from his massive fall to fire embers landing on him. The creature that tried to save him is now burning down Arcane's lab. He tried to get away before the entire castle explodes. From the explosion, the monster awakens and a memory returns to him. During the walk, he happened to step on a landmine. Saved by Arcane, he was turned into the abomination we saw before. He looked in shock at his new form as the man that saved him calls him brother. We find out that the woman called Abigail is actually this monster's daughter, the one he was on his way to see when the tragedy struck. He strikes the man and takes the unconscious Abigail away. While escaping with her, Swamp Thing sees and believes he is a monster kidnapping a villager, so he intervenes. Because neither can communicate, they start to fight. Before their battle can really begin, an angry mob catches up to them. Swamp Thing gets manhandled again, and seriously, they are making him look really weak in this issue. He spends half of it unconscious or getting beat up. I always believed him to be pretty strong, but I suppose not in the beginning? When the monster goes to punish Abigail for attacking him, Swamp Thing shows up to stop him. He backhands him like he is late on his payments, and is finally starting to be the winner of a fight. That is, until Abigail starts to fall with some wreckage. Both monsters put aside their differences and, ignoring the mob behind them, go to save her, who is hanging from a beam. The Patchwork Man falls into the abyss while Swamp Thing saves her. He hands her back and walks away. Matt leaves, vowing to find the creature again, if it takes the rest of his life, while Swamp Thing is hanging on the outside of his plane. Now we have the next issue within this issue, Monster of the Moors. The plane seems to have crashed, and Swamp Thing stands in the fog, watching two people check on the crash. Swamp Thing seems to think the people have nefarious plans and decides to follow them, strangely referring to the guy who is trying to kill him as a friend. Cable tells the story of how the plane crashed, a severe storm caused them to look for a landing, only to see runway lights conveniently. Swamp Thing monologues to himself that the reason they survived was he acted as their brake while landing, and then says he could clear everything up and everyone would be happy, but decides not to because if people knew he was alive, they would want to try to get his formula. Kind of dumb. Despite being specifically told by the people that live there to not go out into the fog, the pilot does anyway and dies by having his throat torn out. Later, in the safety of the house, we learn that Cable is a bad pet owner, having forgotten entirely that he had a dog, and the dog was on the plane with them when it crashed. Cable announces he is going to leave, and we are introduced to another character, who we can only assume is the old couple's son, Ian McCobb. The only mode of transportation that they had, though, is lost, as the McCobb family's horse ran away after the old man conveniently never tied it up. They have to stay there another night. While searching for what was spooking their dog, Cable and Abigail search the fog like idiots and come across what I can only assume is a werewolf. They run deeper into the fog, since they are blocked from the house, only to be saved by the person this comic is supposed to be about, but has been in almost none of it so far, Swamp Thing. The creature got the better of Swamp Thing, which I suppose shouldn't be a surprise. Swampy seems to not be very good at the hero thing. While the Swamp Thing is drowning in quicksand of all things, the werewolf just walks off. Back at the mansion, Cable and Abigail drink some sherry from the super creepy hosts and pass out from the obviously drugged drinks. We find out that the parents are trying to cure their son of the werewolf disease by swapping the blood between their son and Lieutenant Cable. They even plan for this by putting up lanterns to feign a runway to lure someone there. The son gets pretty upset to learn how monstrous his parents are and transforms. Before he can hurt anybody though, Swampy shows up and tussles with the beast. Desperately trying to find some silver before the beast kills him, he notices they forgot to remove the silver in the chandelier. Throwing the chandelier at the beast's mom tries to jump in front, only to be pushed out of harm's way by the werewolf. The beast dies and his parents say their goodbyes. The comic ends with Cable being super ungrateful that the Swamp Thing saved his life once again, vowing to make him pay as a lone Swamp Thing walks away in the distance. I would have finished the rest of the Roots of Swamp Thing comics, but I noticed that each issue has about 2 to 3 stories in it, and this video would have been incredibly long, so I'm going to stop here. Swamp Thing was not what I was expecting, to be honest. I found it to be incredibly hard to keep my interest, as the first one read like an emo read Edgar Allan Poe for the first time. After that, it just seemed like they didn't know how to have the Swamp Thing fight anything without losing immediately and being out of the story for the majority of it, to come back at the end and win in a short scuffle. I'm sure his story gets really cool later on, but as a newcomer starting from the very beginning, it was torturous, and I wouldn't recommend it to anybody.